In the headlines, Lalibela town freed. China praised for its win-win approach to do business in Africa, unlike the West. Warm welcome to ETV News. I am Grum Tariku. Now the news in detail. Ethiopian troops have liberated Lalibela town, the UNESCO World Heritage Site of rock-hewn churches in North Wollo zone of the Amhara state, so far occupied by the terrorist so-called TDF forces. Ethiopian troops have reinforced the offensive against the invading TDF in collaboration with the Fano, Amhara Special Forces, militia and other paramilitary units in the series of gains being made in North and South Wollo zones of the Amhara state. This gain is said to pave the way for the advance towards Waldia, another strategic town, whose fall indicates the effective choking of the TPLF between North Shawa and Wollo, thus losing any means of escape route. In a related development, Commander-in-Chief of the Ethiopian Armed Forces, Abiy Ahmed, affirmed that complete victory is inevitable as far as Ethiopia maintains national unity. The remark came here yesterday while the Commander-in-Chief congratulated Ethiopians and friends of Ethiopia upon the resounding victory attained at Gashana, Arabita, and several other areas of the combined Ethiopian forces in the state of Amhara. Daniel Kasaun has more on this.
The people of Ethiopia are called to rise together in all fields, particularly in the fight against the terrorist TPLF aggressions, so as to avoid existential threats posed against the country. The combined Ethiopian army, consisting of defense troops, the Amhara Fano, militia and regional special forces, as well as other paramilitary units, has recaptured territory from the terrorist so-called TDF fighters. The announcement of territorial gains in the war-torn Amhara follows news over the weekend that government forces have recaptured the town of Chofra in the state of Afar. Commander-in-Chief of the Ethiopian Army, Abiy Ahmed, left the capital Addis Ababa to direct fighting from the front lines last week. Gains by the military in the states of Afar and Amhara would be a blow to TDF forces, who are fleeing in mass as their advance further southward through Amhara and march on to the capital is now curtailed.
The
fall of Gashana has tremendous benefits for Ethiopians, as it is a strategic town. The commander-in-chief already told us yesterday that Ethiopian forces made all preparations to recapture it, and now his words have come true. Ethiopians expect heavier gains in the days and weeks to come.
The Ethiopian gains have caught the attention of even some of the West-inclined media outlets. Reuters spoke to a resident in the village of Kranyamba, 25 kilometers southwest from the town of Laribella, a United Nations World Heritage Site home to famous rock-hewn churches, who said so-called TDF forces had left her village yesterday. Al Jazeera is also read saying Ethiopian government forces retook string of towns from TPLF forces. The so-called TDF's march eastward to occupy the road linking landlocked Ethiopia to the region's main port has now been effectively thwarted by the gallant ANDF and Afar Special Forces. Ethiopian soldiers now control the strategic Gashana town in North Wollo zone. Also, Warailu in South Wollo zone has now fallen to the Ethiopian troops. Further south, the town of Shawarobi, 220 kilometers northeast of Addis Ababa, and 8 other towns and villages have been effectively retaken by the ENDF and Amhara forces. Mezazo, Molale, and other areas were liberated from TPLF forces. The Ethiopian army has also taken control of Ingiftu, Agasta, and Warailu towns, all at the Warailu front, South Wollo zone in the state of Amhara. In his tweet, the commander-in-chief has congratulated all who contributed in the battlefront and other areas in the diplomatic, economic, communication, and logistics spheres to the victories gained. Abiy also extended a congratulatory message to all those who facilitated logistics and took care of troops, maintained security and supported the internally displaced persons in several fronts. International media outlets have their say on this reversal scenario.
You are watching ETV News, and now let's turn our attention to trending stories on Ethiopia over the past 24 hours. And I'm now joined in the studio by our staff reporter, Goshu Meliso, to tell us more in this regard. Welcome to the studio, Goshu.
Thank you, Groom.
First, the historic town of Lalibela is freed yesterday and recaptured by the National Defense Forces. So what's your take on this? What are the implications?
Yeah, over the past 24 hours, I have seen two issues. The first one is UNESCO heritage site Lalibela is freed from terrorist TPLF. And the other thing is Ethiopians in the diaspora rallied against CNN fake news. And controlling Lalibela means it's a lot. It is one of historical sites. And the terrorist TPLF controlled Lalibela for the last 3 months, and the people have been receiving a lot of atrocities by the terrorist TPLF. And controlling Lalibela means it is an immense role to the next victory. As you know, earlier this week, many areas liberated, which has been controlled by the TPLF, like Gashena. Gashena plays an immense role to control Lalibela, and Lalibela also play an important role to control Woldea. You know, in the upper side, it is blocked. All the terrorist TPLF groups which are in Amhara region are surrounded by Ethiopian National Defense Force, Amhara militia, and Fano. So the victory in Gashena said to have eased the march to Lalibela, to Woldea. And as I told you earlier, it has posed a great concern on UNESCO heritage. This historic site is liberated by Amhara National Force or Indomitable National Defense Force and local militias. The terrorist TPLF mostly targeted historic areas and religious institutions mostly. However, the terrorist groups may, whether it has damaged the Roman churches or not yet confirmed. And the TPLF also committed mass atrocities against innocent civilians in the area where they invaded. The other thing is, now Lalibela is the strategic place to free the other areas. Now you see victory comes to the Ethiopian National Defense Force and the local militias. The other thing is, as you know, Western media outlets like CNN, Al Jazeera, BBC and other international media outlets are spreading fake news over Ethiopia. So Ethiopians in the diaspora, after they joined the hashtag no movement, they rallied against that fake news.
What are the other trending stories that you observed over the past 24 hours?
Yeah, the other thing is the Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has called on the Ethiopian friends in the diaspora around the world to join hashtag Great Ethiopian Home Challenge, Ethiopian Homecoming Challenge. You know, this tells something about now the Ethiopia is liberated from its invaders, the terrorist TPLF. Then Bilene Siyum, the press secretary of the PM office, has also called on Ethiopians in the diaspora. There is summer season, Christmas. There is a break between.
So they are expected to come for Christmas.
Yeah, Christmas. So it has an immense role in image building and earning foreign currency. This is what I have for this trending time. Thank you so much, Guru.
Staff reporter Goshu Meliso, thank you very much for your presence in the studio.
Thank you.
ለጠላት ያለኝ መልእክት ገብተው መልካም ምድሩን የማያውቁ ጦርነቱን የማያውቁ ሰዎች በውር ድንበር እያስፈጁት የትግራይ ወጣት እንደ ቅጠል እየረገፈ ነው። ይህ የትግራይ ወጣት መሸነፉን አውቆ አሁን ባለው ግልጽ ራዕይ በሌለው እቅድ በሌለው መዳረሻውን በማያውቅ የውር ድንበር ጉዞ ድል እንደማይመጣ አውቆ እጁን ለሀገር መከላከያ ሰራዊት፣ ለልዩ ኃይሎች፣ ለሚሊሻ፣ ለህዝቡ ከዛሬ ጀምሮ እንዲሰጥ ያ ማድረግ ካልቻለ በሰሞኑ ያየው አላግባብ የመርገፍ ሁኔታ ይቀጥላል ማለት ነው። ሰው እንዳይሞት ስለሚፈለግ እነዚህ ወጣቶች እጃቸውን ይሰጡ። ጦርነቱ እንዳለቀ የዘረፋ ተግባር ባጭር እንደሚቀጭ ተገንዝበው እጃቸውን ይሰጡ። የትግራይ እናቶች ደግሞ እንዲጠይቁ ልጄ የታል እንዲሉ መጠየቅ አለባቸው። ልጆቻቸውን በከንቱ እያረገፈ ለሚቀልድ ኃይል ዝም ማለት ሳይሆን ጠይቀው ልጃቸው የታል ማለት አለባቸው።
Ethiopia needs no foreign interference to resolve its internal conflict, said China Foreign Minister on Wednesday. Yang Yi made the remark during his meeting with Ethiopian Foreign Minister Demeqa Mekonnen in the capital Addis Ababa. Wang said China is closely following the situation in Ethiopia and opposes attempts by external forces to impose their political interest on the domestic affairs of Ethiopia. Haptam Washagri reports.
Chinese Foreign Affairs Minister Yang Li arrived in Addis Ababa this morning. The visit comes at a time when China has promised to throw a total of $10 billion to boost private investment in the continent, Ethiopia being a prime destination. Demeqa briefed his Chinese counterpart on developments in the conflict, saying TPLF forces are now on the defensive as the Commander-in-Chief Abiy Ahmed went into the front last week to lead his army in person, a move that triggered more gains on the battlefield. Speaking on the occasion, Demeqa Mekonnen appreciated the unwavering position of China to recognize the recent condition of Ethiopia.
We had very good and constructive discussions this morning. We addressed different outstanding issues, and we really recognize and appreciate the Chinese government's principled, consistent, and our government and the people of Ethiopia appreciates the strong commitment of China and recognizing and their committed position for the sovereignty and integrity of Ethiopia.
Demeqa briefed his Chinese counterpart on developments in the conflict, saying TPLF forces are now on the defensive as the Commander-in-Chief Abiy Ahmed went to the front last week.
We tried to update the current situation in Ethiopia, especially in the current conflicts, and our determined position to curb and to manage this crisis. Our government is managing to save the country, our sovereignty, and the unity of Ethiopia.
According to Demeqa, the Chinese government expressed their desire to cement multilateral and bilateral fields.
The Chinese government support and commitment is really very exceptional and practical, and on our side we are also ready enough to strengthen our bilateral relations and to play pivotal role in the multilateral and bilateral areas.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, for his part, said China believes Ethiopia can solve the recent political turmoil on its own, opposing any Western intervention in the internal affairs of a sovereign nation.
中国不干涉别的国家内政，当然不干涉安全。我们也反对别的国家 干涉
China and Ethiopia have strong strategic cooperation. Furthermore, China rejects any foreign intervention against sovereign nations like Ethiopia. So we believe that Ethiopia has the capacity to stabilize the recent situation across the country on its own.
谈判和协商来找到
One green market, China is otherwise ready to cement the recent strategic partnership with Ethiopia into the highest level.
中国党政府非常关心我们在埃塞俄比亚工作和生活的中国的公民，关心他们的。
The Chinese government is confident that Ethiopia will take effective measures to restore the well-being of Chinese as well as Chinese investment across the country. Thus, China is also confident to bolster its ties with Ethiopia in various fields.
企业的正当的利益。
In a related development, Ethiopia and China have already forged strong relations in various fields. Chinese investment in Ethiopia's economic infrastructure has soared, changing the country's face. How has the relationship evolved over the years, and what stages had it passed to get to where it is now? Let's take a look.
The official relations between China and Ethiopia date back to 1964, when Chinese Premier Zhou Enlai visited Ethiopia. The Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie visited Beijing in October 1971, where he was received by Mao Zedong. Since then, the two countries have made several agreements on trade, investment, technology and other areas. With active and intensive engagement in Ethiopia's infrastructure development, Chinese companies have played unprecedented role in building roads, hydropower dams, railways and telecom substructure.
Our relationship is strengthening from time to time. As you know, we have signed the comprehensive strategic framework agreement. As per this agreement, our relationship is all-weather one in its kind and a very comprehensive one.
That speaks volume of the importance we attach to these bilateral relations. This is what we call comprehensive, strategic, cooperative partnership.
The boom in Ethiopia's infrastructure has helped the country to gain good momentum in speeding up its economic growth. Another important fruit of the Ethio-China ties over the past 50 years is that the two sides have already attained a multifaceted economic relationship. For example, for Ethiopia's all-rounded development projects, China has provided billions of dollars in loan finance. Although there is growing Chinese investment in the Ethiopian economy, the trade imbalance between the two shall be narrowed. Ethiopia is also a significant market for Chinese exporters that will expand as Ethiopia's rapid economic growth continues. It's also worth mentioning that Chinese direct aid to Ethiopia has included dispatch of medical teams and teachers and educational scholarships for Ethiopian students studying in China. During the global corona pandemic season, the Chinese government has sent medical team and medical equipment, including vaccines, to Ethiopia. China's aid program funded the construction of a vocational school in Ethiopia. Although the plan was to use Chinese vocational instructionists, the school eventually switched to German instructors with students learning skills including engineering, automobile, architecture and construction. Trade volume between the two has now reached close to $5 billion. Ethiopian exports encouraged through special quota and tariff arrangements on many goods. Politicians from both sides agree that the Ethio-China relation can be a good example of Africa-China cooperation. Seeing massive transformation now, the relation between Ethiopia and China have not only grown in leaps and bounds and expanded in many fields including economy, politics, security, technology transfer, academia and capacity building, but also attained a cooperative partnership level.
China firmly supports Ethiopia in pursuing the development path that fits its national conditions. We support Ethiopia's efforts to uphold its sovereignty, grow its economy, and create better lives for its people.
Lately, China has vowed to expand the scope of zero-tariff treatment products from the least developed countries that have diplomatic relations with China and strive to achieve a total import volume of $300 billion in products from Africa in the next 3 years. China has also become a reliable development partner of Ethiopia and a true friend of Ethiopia, who has always stood by the country, even during bad times. The current visit of Chinese Foreign Minister to Ethiopia clearly attests this.
Chinese overseas economic policy is said to emanate from doing business without any precondition, unlike other Western countries whose policy benefits often have strings attached to them. This remark was made by an Ethiopian economist, Demis Chanyalo, in an exclusive interview with ETV English, commenting on the recent Chinese Green Lanes trading platform to African nations. Demis urged Ethiopia to take any advantage for exporting its agricultural goods on the international market without and within such platforms. Jerusalem Bitsa has sat down with the expert and compiled the following report.
China has increased its unconditional spending and attention to Africa, as well as emphasis on the continent's stated priorities, such as improved infrastructure. Similarly, Ethiopia's interest is that China is actively engaged in its economic development and, as elsewhere in Africa, helps in its loans and infrastructure projects and its accessibility. On the other side, the US and Western nations' economic approach to Africa focused on utilizing the natural and human power on the continent with so much strings attached. Talking to ETV, an Ethiopian economist, Demis Chanyalo articulated the two powers' differing foreign economic policy towards Africa, including Ethiopia.
In terms of policy, China go to the developing countries without predominantly conditionalities. It doesn't require that you have to be an open economy, a democracy, human rights, so on and so forth. China is business, okay? But when it comes to the US and some European countries, they want to indulge within your economic system as well as your political system, and they are primarily for their interests, and they advocate more for open market because they want to bring their companies and do business, and primarily their motive is exploitation of both natural resources, the human power, and also conquer markets. They raise issues of humanity, human rights, okay? And they do say one very interesting thing, that they want to be partner with you in trade and economic dimension, so long as you are not making something to hurt their interests, which is totally different from
the hypocrisy of the West has led it to commit economic conspiracy on Ethiopia, Demis said, citing the US conspiracy on the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam as an example.
Conspiracy is always there. Okay, if something beneficial to the country is going to happen, particularly something that has to do with land issues, something that is going to do with resources, energy uses, like, for example, the Grand Renaissance Dam. Okay? For long, it's because the Western conspired with Egypt and the Middle East that we were not able to do it. When we decided, as people, the government decided to build the dam, they thought initially we can't do it. But when they noticed that we can, with the resources that we can garner from within, then start coming with different action. On the other hand, Chinese, as I said, they are latecomers. Yes, they have a business motive, but they are trying to come often and penetrate in different developing countries on a win-win approach or on a mutual gain basis.
China came up with what's known as the Green Lanes Initiative, meant to give market opportunity to African nations. This comes weeks after the US announced the delisting of Ethiopia from the African Growth and Opportunity Act, or AGOA. Demis argues that Ethiopia should always focus on taking its comparative advantage.
Americans, although at the very beginning said AGWA is open for 6,400 or more product lines, 96% they were taking crude oil from Africa. The share of agriculture in the export markets through AGWA was less than 3%. Compare these figures. So it's very clear how Americans and the Chinese are playing, and it must be very clear for us how we should prepare ourselves in terms of our trade policies and strategies. I think Ethiopians should not, we have to take these openings anytime, take advantage of it. But we are doing business without it, and we have to continue. How? We must be able to produce competitive goods and services and sell it with or without such kind of conditions or offers.
According to China's Ministry of Commerce, trade between China and Africa increased by 40.5% year-on-year in the first 7 months of 2021 and was valued at a record high of $139.1 billion USD.
And finally, the TPLF has evolved from a modest organization at its formation to a complete monster of terrorization, brutal killings, and treacherous acts. The group's values went off track and made the Ethiopian conflict with the TPLF irreconcilable. The remark was made by Gidai Zarazion, one of the founders of TPLF. Gidai, who left the organization before it captured Addis Ababa in 1991 over ideological row, has outlined the formation and evolvement of the TPLF in an exclusive interview with Hermela Aragabi. Shifarau Lako presents the story as follows.
The TPLF was founded by a group of students in the arid bushes of Dadabit, Tigray in 1975 as an extension of the Ethiopian student movement with the questions of democracy, national cohesion, land reform, and change of government. One of the original founders of the organization, Gidai Zarazion, has spent some time with journalist Hermela Aragawi explaining the original goal and ideas when TPLF was formed until it went off track at present. He says at the beginning the TPLF members were humble and disciplined to the point of getting the attention and support of the general public. After coming to power, though, it began to show its other face, which meant none other than corruption, dictatorship, divisive ethnicity, and polarization.
Completely changed. I mean, they have taken a different turn. You know, the issues of democracy, it was not democratic, it was dictatorial. It believes in one-party system. It does not allow other parties to operate. It was corrupt. It was like a mafia organization, you can say. It was looting the country. It was divisive as well. In order to stay in power, it has been playing the different ethnic differences against each other. It was divisive. It was also polarizing these differences and conflicts in the different regions. There were torture, human rights abuses, all this.
This eventually resulted in the deposing of the TPLF, which went to Mekelle and began to hatch plots of overthrowing the government using the people of Tigray as cannon fodders, he said. It also indulged itself in committing atrocious and heinous crimes, not to mention its terrorism and slaughtering of people.
It's just people are dispensable. It is not so many, it doesn't bother about the people. And at now, as we see, just now, it is a terrorist organization, purely a terrorist organization. But now, it is in Amhara region, it is looting there, killing people, raping women, distracting institutions, and different developmental institutions as well. So TPLF has evolved from a very modest, very humble, disciplined organization into what you see now.
The TPLF, which claimed to have fought for the people of Tigray, also abandoned their own people once they got into power, and its legacy was only ethnic-induced conflicts, hatred, and different kinds of chaos.
They owned the biggest corporations like Effort and the rest in the country. They had a lot of money, but they didn't invest in Tigray because it was not profitable in Tigray. They were after profit, not after the concerns of developing the people. So they have invested in areas where they get money. That's what they did. So the Tigrayans didn't get anything from in terms of economy. They didn't gain. So there is still that question of economy, the question of democracy still. This was a very suppressive. I mean, it follows the most controlled type of system. It believes in one-party system, and it has a network down to the bottom of the family level where it controls the people.
Gidey, who served as the member of the Central Committee and chair of the organization, was betrayed by the traitor organization simply because he had differing views. So he had to leave the organization and his beloved country via the Sudan for Norway.
Now, a reminder of the headlines. Lalibela town freed. China praised for its win-win approach to do business in Africa, unlike the West. You have been watching ETV News. Thanks for joining us, and we invite you to stay with us for the rest of our program.